Audience, welcome to Viewpoint from Overseas. This is your host, Ms. Bazam. Today we have one very special guest. He is a public intellectual, international level public intellectual, and we all read his articles. His name is Mr. Zahid Hussain. He is joining us from Pakistan. So, hello, Mr. Zahid Hussain. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm doing well.
Mr. Zahid has some problem, some flu-like symptom, but he's so nice that he still joined us. So, Zahid, I would like to ask you some questions very quickly for 10 minutes, and then we will let you go after that. First of all, please explain our viewers in United States that how in Pakistan the people are looking at Mr. Trump's speech and what they think about the future of Mr. Trump's presidency as a president of United States, and which will be impacting on Pakistan.
Well, actually, there's a serious concern in Pakistan as in other countries, and also in the United States about the future policy of Mr. Trump. He has clearly indicated that he will follow the policy which he has been campaigning for. And I think the major concern is about his rhetoric about Islamic terrorism. That's a major concern because this term has been has a very serious connotation, and there's also concern about Mr. Trump's policy, immigration policy. Lots of Pakistanis live there, and they have relatives in Pakistan too. So these are two major concerns about the United States' future role in domestic policy, as well as impact on region. Pakistan and Afghanistan has never been in the discussion during Mr. Trump's campaign. It's not very clear what is going to his policy, but one thing seems to be very clear that there is not going to be any change as far as the United States regional policy is concerned. At this point of time, it seems that Trump's major focus is on the domestic economy and actually taking United States to a period of isolation, which we have seen witnessed in 1930s. When he raised the slogan of "America First," it has a similar connotation as American has witnessed way back in 1930s. So there is still a lot of confusion, I would say. It's still, as far as his speech was concerned, there's some serious, some very clear indication that it's not going to, he will pursue a policy of isolationism, and also actually will be tough on immigrants. But there is still actually lots of other policy decision is still actually in the air. So I think probably when we talk about his impact on the region, it's much more on the United States itself than on the region.
I see. So I think that thank you very much for your input, and we will be in touch with you, and I hope you will be feeling good very soon. So thank you very much, Mr. Zahid Hussain. So audience, you heard Mr. Zahid Hussain's conversation regarding Pakistan's concern, Pakistanis' concern about Mr. Trump's speech and his coming days in office. Now let us come back to our panelists. I have with me Mr. Riyaz Haq and Mr. Ali Hassan Samantur. And we will not only talk the same question which I asked from Mr. Zahid Hussain. I will also ask them about nowadays there is this in Davos, this World Economic Forum is going on, and the question is coming up there. The shock wave is generated because it has been considered that the Brexit and the Trump vote is kind of in the denial of the globalization, which they say. We will talk about that and ask our panelists how do they see that. Then recently, actually just this week, Lashkar-e-Jhangvi's second head, who took the position after Mr. Malik Ishaq, Mr. Asif Chotu, he was also killed in the encounter. So I will ask my panelists about this incident as well, and then ask their views. How do they see it? So, Riaz, I would like to start from you. Did you hear Mr. Trump's speech today?
Mm-hmm.
You
I
hear
did,
it,
yes.
you hear it completely. How do you see the speech?
So I think there's fundamentally it was his themes that he repeated were essentially the same as we heard during his campaign and in the last few months since he was elected. There was no pivot. One of the things that is generally expected when someone is elected president of the United States is that they actually pivot to a more conciliatory tone, and they talk about being president of all of America and bringing people together and healing the divide that occurs as a result of very
Controversial
powerful
elections,
campaigns,
yes,
where there's a lot of back and forth and attacks on each other. None of that was there. He didn't do that. It was essentially a very anti-establishment speech. Some of the words he used were essentially aimed at the establishment.
But he had for Senator Secretary Clinton, he had a stand-up ovation.
That was later, not at the inauguration.
Okay,
it was at another
After
event.
that. No,
afterwards,
that's true,
when
but,
people probably
yeah.
reminded him, hey, usually you should mention these things, and then he thought about it.
Oh,
and he-
okay.
And then there was this America First theme, that America First, he said that several times. Another thing he said was he's going to eradicate, Islamic radical Islam threat from it. So, these are the kinds of things that he said. Now, one of the problems with the way he talked about it was that, it's probably accurate, as Mr. Zahid Hussain said, that he is more inwardly focused because he's talking about, creating jobs and helping
Yes.
people improve their lives, and talking about isolationism. But at the same time, he's also talking about, eradicating radical Islam, the threat from it.
Yeah.
So the issue is that if he turns off all of the allies and he says things, one of the things, for example, he said was probably squared at the allies, and that was a statement about not subsidizing
their military.
yeah,
and,
not subsidizing their militaries.
Yeah.
Now, if he doesn't work with them and he accuses them of sponging off of the United States, then how will they be willing to cooperate with the United States?
Yeah.
So there is a kind of a contradiction in that. On the one hand, he talks about eradicating Islamic radicals, and at the same time, he attacks his own allies who would be helpful
who are going to fight with
in
them. That's
doing
correct.
that.
Yes.
So that's an issue
Yeah.
that is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
That's a big contradiction in his speech today.
Yeah, Ali.
Yeah, I did not, I missed the speech itself, but I read the excerpts. And I think that I am confused about what his policies are going to be, Mr. Trump's policies. Because
President Trump's policy.
President Trump's, policies, because yes, he talks about the journalist stuff. One thing is certain is that he does not like the way the United States was running under Mr. Obama. For example, when Obama was doing this war on terror, the idea was not to ever use the word Islamic terrorism, because otherwise you are in a way could be hurting the feelings of
politically
over 1 billion.
incorrectness, that's correct.
But he is more. He's bolder in this stance that he wants to use the word Islamic terrorism.
No, he didn't use Islamic terrorism.
He did.
No, he said Islamic radicalism.
Yeah, the exact statement I have that. He said, we will reinforce old alliances and form new ones and unite the civilized world against radical Islamic terrorism,
Yeah, radical Islamic terrorism.
which we will eradicate from the face of the
Yeah.
earth. So he used the word
Yeah, but,
terrorism in that.
But the way I see it, he took it. He pointing out to ISIS and these type of things, very specific when he say this thing.
Yeah, that's
So don't you think that
that's a matter of how and who is listening to these words. For many people, it could be that you are putting Islam and terrorism together. So in a way, you are maligning over 1 billion people, and you're calling them terrorists. So
No,
that's why.
How you see it?
Yeah, I don't have any problems with this, word of radical Islamic terrorism, because what it means is that there is peaceful Islam and then there is a radical Islam, and this terrorism is being done by the radical Islam, which I don't have any issues with. But I am saying that the Obama administration was much more careful in the use of these words, and he's not. So we have to see how it unfolds. But as far as the domestic front is concerned, there are a lot of people who have these hopes that he would do things so that they would get employment. And what we are seeing, his approach is that if there are international companies that are manufacturing things for the U.S., then they cannot do it outside, they have to do it inside. Otherwise, if they do it outside, he's going to impose taxes,
high tariffs
and then
that's correct.
that's why. But if that happens, then it will not be an easy transformation. You will not start making all the different kind of things which are coming from outside suddenly here in the U.S. But it would be a time when things could become very expensive if you have such kind of tariffs imposed on the imports.
Yes, just explain it to me, please. If you see the economy overall is good. I mean, it's not bad economy. And during President Obama's time, the unemployment went from 7.2% going to 5.4%, if I am quoting correctly. Maybe I'm missing some points here and there, but around the same thing. So what he is going to give more? Because do you really think that these big, huge companies, they really move their whole businesses here and lose so much money? Besides, Intel already had some of the fabs here, but they're all automated. They don't need a lot of people. Besides, there is this oil company. They were saying that even if we are allowed to go and for the shale drilling and all, it will not cause too many jobs. So what Mr. Trump would do differently? Just forcing them to come here and make the prices high everywhere? How you see it?
Yeah, I think his rhetoric is already having an effect. One of the things we've seen in recent months, in the last couple of months, is that several auto companies have decided to not build factories
like Mexico,
in Mexico
yes.
and build them here instead.
So don't you think that he already told them to some incentive? That's why they...
Yeah, so I think sometimes just the threat that they may not be able to sell their product here is enough. See, one of the things that has happened to the American economy is that a lot of these big companies essentially moved a lot of the jobs overseas to try and save cost. And then they most of the trade deficit United States has is not because the other countries are making and selling stuff. It's because the American companies are going there, setting up plants and bringing the products here to try and increase their profits. So one of the calculations, I think what he's trying to do, this is my understanding of it, I hope that he has thought through this.
Some calculation.
But my thinking of, I think the way he's calculating it is that if he threatens them that he's going to impose tariffs, that may change some of the current plans they have, which we've already seen with the auto companies. They may decide to not create more plants outside, if they need to expand capacity here. The second is that the calculation would be that, let's say there is a 30% tariff. That means that the product is going to be 30% more expensive.
More expensive.
Okay? So what they need to figure out is, can they save that by building plants here that are basically highly automated
That's true.
but they still create jobs.
Yeah.
You know, if instead of, let's say, a factory employing, you know, like 10,000 people the old way, you know, doing a lot of manual stuff, if they create a new factory that employs 1,000 or 2,000 people, there's still, you know, 1,000, 2,000 more jobs than you had before. So there is, I think it does make some sense. Now, whether or not this is going to work is still questionable, because this may spark a trade war, and that could be very damaging. So right now, everybody's posturing. I think the foreign countries, Germany's posturing,
That's correct.
China's posturing, hey, you can't do that, or we're going to have a trade war. But in the end, they may realize, hey, this guy means business.
Yeah.
So we have to do something. Now, Germany, for example, they have a huge trade surplus with the United States. And the reason for that is that they export a lot of their high-end cars to the United States. Now, they make some here, but not enough. They still import a lot from Germany. What they could end up doing is maybe build more plants that build Mercedes and in BMWs and those kinds of cars here in the United States instead of building them in Germany. So that would certainly create jobs. So it'll have some effect.
Ali, I will ask you quickly, and then I will go to Riaz also, and I will have him with other question, and I will have him answer that question also, which I'm about to ask you. How you see overall Obama's presidency, and then how you see Mr. Trump's presidency impacting Pakistan, although Zahid told us very inside news, inside analysis there. But how you see it as an American?
Yeah, since we saw what happened during George Bush's government, after 8 years, the economy was not doing too well, and there was a lot of unemployment, and there were other issues too. There was the U.S. was in war, both in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and Mr. Obama came with the promise that he would pull out the troops from these places, because there was a growing dissatisfaction in the U.S. about the U.S. Army fighting these wars at all these different places. So what he did was he came up with and people basically made him realize that it is not very advisable to just pull out like that, because otherwise the threat is so real that if there is a complete pullout, then there would be elements outside in these places which would come to harm the U.S. and therefore some way those people should be engaged right there in those lands. So the strategy changed, and the strategy was to use more and more drones,
Sure.
and sometimes other forces that were working with you. So, and because of that, there were problems, as we saw in Iraq, the growth of ISIS, and then in Syria of not taking any action about in Syria. That's why we saw growth of ISIS there. So a lot of things happened, outside the United States, which in a way were bad on his watch, and which would decide about his presidency being a successful one or not. As far as domestically, if we look at his track record, it has been very well. The economy improved, the unemployment went down, and that's how he would be looked at domestically.
But there's a lot of people say that when the unemployment going down is because a lot of people started coming out from the workforce. So that's why this number go down. As far as his Obamacare is concerned, 2015 to 16 it was like 7% increase. 2016 to 17, 22% increase, more than 3%, 3 times increase. And they say if it will stay, it will be even more. And reason is that a lot of people are not joining it, a lot of companies leaving it. How you see that?
Yeah, so I think on the economic front, clearly the economy was in serious crisis when he took
Tell
over.
international policies also. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
please.
and I think he pulled the United States out of that crisis.
Okay.
So he gets a lot of credit for that. He also created millions of new jobs There's no question about that.
Okay.
I mean, the numbers are there.
Okay.
And he enrolled 20 million more people in health insurance, which is a big number. I mean, there was a lot of people uninsured in the United States.
Yeah.
They became, insured as a result of it. As far as the cost is concerned, I think even though the increase is there, but if you look at the actual curve, he did bend the cost curve. The cost curve was going like this, now it's going like this. So it has actually slowed the growth.
No, but it was 7%, 15, 16, 16, 17.
These
was
are premiums
22%.
you're talking
Yeah,
about.
premiums I'm
Yeah,
talking.
yeah,
Yeah, overall cost you are saying.
Yeah, I'm talking about the overall cost. The overall cost actually bent. See, one of the problems U.S. has, it's a bigger problem than just Obamacare. Currently, U.S. spends about 17% of its GDP on healthcare. And by 2020, it's going to be 20% of GDP. That's a huge number.
Huge number.
So it takes up, and part of it is because the population is aging, people are getting older, they need more care. So I think the U.S. has to deal with this problem one way or the other. Most other countries deal with it through universal health care. And what they do is they use these single payer kind of a system. U.S. doesn't have that. So I think even if they repeal Obamacare, they're going to have to do something. Otherwise, they're going to have a lot of problems. You're going to have a lot of people that are uninsured.
Actually, that's what they are saying, that they will not repeal until the new thing, replacement.
Yeah, but I think the problem is that when you send out a signal to the industry that it's going to be repealed, that creates a lot of uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, many of the insurers might want to pull out of this marketplace. So it might die just simply because of that uncertainty.
Yes, I will come to the next topic. As you know that in Davos there is a World Economic Forum meetings going on, and the thing is that there is a concern there that due to Mr. Trump's victory, there is a hit on the globalization. How you see that happening, and talk about it, that they did discuss about different economic levels, like people are, and disparity just is kind of increasing between them. Just please explain about it.
So what has happened is that these are people who meet at World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. These are very powerful people. They're politically powerful, they're politicians, they're businessmen, they're basically investors. The kind of people that are essentially the movers and shakers of the world. These people are very, very concerned about two things have sent shockwaves through their ranks. One is Brexit, where the British decided to pull out of a common market. And the second is Trump's win, which is also anti-trade, anti-globalization.
And maybe now the third one will be.
And there are many European countries where these populist groups that are anti-trade are rising up, and they're getting a lot of support. So they have a big concern that this is going to happen. Now that obviously worries them because it's going to hit their bottom line. So they're talking about things like growing inequality, and they publish. In fact, they published an Oxfam paper that says that the world inequality is growing dramatically. They found the global average now for what the top 1% own is 50%. Top 1% of the world
is taking
owning 50% of the wealth,
Yeah.
and in some countries like India, it is 58.4% of the wealth is owned by the top 1%. So huge inequalities.
Yeah.
And in fact, the most unequal country is Russia with 70%. India is like number 2 with 58.4%. So those are the big concerns. Now they did a survey of they published what's called the World Economic Forum's annual global risk report. Of 700 experts, and they found rising income and wealth disparity and increasing polarization of sectors of society. They rank number 1 and number 3 risks to the future of the world. And they're worried about real serious social problems as a result of growing inequality. So they're sounding out a warning. that we need to pay attention and figure out how we're going to reduce these inequalities.
Ali, how you see that what Riaz just mentioned, that this gap is increasing between rich and poor, and
Yeah.
so when Mr. Trump will give the tax breaks, that will go to all rich people, because in US probably third number, right? I mean, in this
U.S. is like 40% of the
Yeah.
wealth is owned by the top 1%.
by the top 1%. Yeah, That
It's
is-
actually lower than many
Yeah.
countries.
Yeah.
But it's still a problem.
No, that's true. It's a problem. But the thing is that most of the tax break will go to them.
Yeah.
So I do not understand what correlation these numbers of inequality have with Brexit or Trump's victory, because both these are recent events. Nothing has happened. This has happened on the watch of continuous globalization. So why are you blaming Brexit or Trump's victory for it?
No, the Trump's victory and
It
Brexit
came
is,
as a
is
result
kind of
increasing
yeah,
dissatisfaction
No, yeah, so-
among people who
Yeah.
blame globalization.
Yes,
and
that's
globalization is what has
Yeah,
increased
yeah,
this inequality.
That's exactly what my point is, that I do not see globalization as something that is equally distributing the wealth over the world. I see globalization in which the state is supporting the capital and the big corporations, and both of these machines, state and the big corporations, are basically milking the small guy. This is what's happening the world over, and this is what we are seeing. So in a way, these things, either Brexit or having an isolationism in the U.S., it would in a way weaken the extent of influence the large corporations have. It could. So maybe it could be a blessing in disguise for the small guy. So I am not too sure, how this would play out in the long run, but it could be that, and this is the kind of economy that, at least, people in the left want to see, in which both, the capital is used at a very local level, and the resources are also used at a very local level, and the people who are the actual owners of the land and of the resources get to benefit from these things first, before this goes out to these large corporations.
Riaz, this is the argument which Ali is giving. I hear a lot this type of argument from Mr. Trump's supporters or Brexit supporters, some of the British people in my workplace who are supporter of Brexit, So they have a very similar argument that actually the globalization is the one which is causing that.
Exactly.
So why not to remove it? That's what basically you are thinking, right? That slowing down the globalization may fix things.
What I'm saying is that maybe, whereas it looks like Trump's victory is going to help the big guy, it could be the other way.
Yeah, that's what.
So I'm saying
Yeah.
that it could be the unintentional
Yes.
result of this,
Yeah.
which I would welcome.
Yeah, I think the globalization is not necessarily a bad thing. One of the things that, there was an economist by the name of Joseph Schumpeter who used to talk about, the idea of creative destruction. That when, new industries are created and old industries die all the time, and economies change. In U.S. economy, for example, what we used to call the Rust Belt,
Yes,
the heavy,
all this, Michigan
auto and steel and
Yes.
those kinds of manufacturing has gone away, but it has created a lot of very high-end jobs as well. So I think the issue is not jobs per se, but the kind of jobs that are being created. What's happening is that you either have jobs that are very high-end, high-tech people are developing software or new products, and they're getting paid very well for that. And on the other hand, you have the hamburger flippers, in the service industry who get minimum wage.
That's correct.
So that's the problem. Now, how do you deal with that? You have to figure out a way. For example, one of the things we just talked about is if automation is, by the way, part of the problem as well. That all of the jobs are not disappearing just because of globalization, or where the jobs is being exported from a higher a cost country to a lower cost country, sort of cost arbitrage. Part of the reason the jobs are disappearing is also because of automation, because automation is actually putting people. So you have to find new ways. One of the ideas that's being discussed to deal with it is this idea of a basic guaranteed income. And some countries are already trying that, where everybody gets a basic income that lets you live, kind of a living income on which you can survive. And then whether you work or not, and then if you want to earn more and you want to have a higher standard of living than what that basic income provides you, then you work and you make the extra money. So there's a lot of serious research and thinking required. Just stopping globalization isn't going to end this thing, because the automation will still be there.
Yeah. Audience, just last week, Lashkar-e-Jhangvi's leader, Mr. Asif Chotu, was killed in the, they call it police encounter. A lot of people say fake encounter, a lot of people say it's genuine encounter. But this is not happening first time. Their previous leader, Mr. Malik Ishaq, was also killed in the same type of encounter. So, Riaz, what do you see about it? We have only 2 minutes for sure. So 1 minute you and 1 minute.
Yeah, so we know that Malik Ishaq and 2 of his sons were killed in an encounter probably about a year or 2 years ago. And a lot of people think that was a fake encounter. It wasn't a real encounter, because they were already in custody when they were killed.
Yes.
Now this time, this guy by the name of Asif Chotu, who had replaced Malik Ishaq as the leader of the Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, and he got killed just a couple of days ago. There was I think a $3 million
bounty on his head.
Bounty on his head. The government wanted to see him dead, but they were having trouble. And I think the other issue is that even if they could find him and somebody brought him, it would be very hard to try him. I mean, the only place he could have been tried is in the military courts, but those military courts don't exist anymore after the expiration of this of the law that they had passed. So I think they decided, hey, let's just get rid of him instead of worry about prosecution. And in general, I think one of the things that Punjab government has been under some pressure lately. Last year, violence actually went down all across the country except Punjab. Punjab, it actually slightly went up. Even sectarian violence went up in Punjab. So they have been under pressure to do something. So they decided, hey, let's take care of this guy.
So, obviously I have a lot of issues with extrajudicial killings or abductions which have happened. And this also falls in the same thing. And what is happening is that this we call the actors of the deep state. There are people who are deciding what the state means and what should be the policies of the state. And they are taking matters into their own hands and going above the law, beyond the law, and taking care of things their own way, which is in a way eroding the legitimacy of the state. So that's why it is very problematic, and it should never happen in a civilized society.
That's true. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard Mr. Zahid Hussain, you heard my friend Riaz Haq and Ali Hassan Samantur on different topics. Ladies and gentlemen, there was a book in 2003 by one of the national security team advisor of President Bill Clinton, Dr. Charles Kupchan. His book's name was End of American Era. In this book, he kind of start looking into from the history, going back to the history, and he's quoting some declassified documents, and he was making his case that how we are moving towards losing our primacy as an American, losing our primacy in the world. He kind of distributed the whole human history into four different stages. One is the nomadic period, one is pre-agriculture revolution, then post-agriculture revolution. Last but not least, the digital revolution, what he called. He did not talk too much about the internet boom because, as you know, in 2003, internet boom was not as much as we can see it now. However, his point was that due to that digital revolution, the things will change, and we will be getting more and more into, we will be start losing the civic sense and more inside, and that's how we start knowing less and less about outside and losing our primacy. Either America will lose its primacy. Now the question is that, are we in that era where the digital revolution caused this type of election, what we saw there? Only time will tell. This is your host, Ms. Bazan. Keep watching Viewpoint from Overseas.